Hey everyone, the channel is on its journey to reach the first 1,000 subscribers. A small milestone, but a truly meaningful one. If you enjoy the content, hit subscribe and let's cross this first milestone together. When he learned that Han Li was going to participate in the life and death duel, what was the reaction of Elder Lu Luo of the Luo Yun sect? The great war between Tian Nan and the Mulan people was about to begin. In order for Han Li to obtain what was needed for the great Zheng sword formation, the main material, Zheng gold, he agreed to fight once again. Junior brother, why must you risk participating in this duel? That Zheng gold is certainly precious, but it is ultimately an external object. If something were to happen to you, junior brother, what would we do? After Lu Luo heard that Han Li was going to participate in the duel, he immediately showed a worried expression. Han Li smiled faintly and said relaxedly, "Senior brother Lu, please don't worry. I am willing to participate in the duel because I am naturally 80 to 90% confident that I can emerge unscathed. Otherwise, why would I have agreed so readily? As for the great battle in 7 days, the safety of the other disciples in the sect, I, your junior brother, won't be able to spare any attention for them, so I'll have to rely entirely on you, senior brother Lu, to look after them. In the battle a few days from now, I will naturally take good care of our disciples. You don't need to worry, junior brother. Since you have such confidence in the duel, junior brother, I won't say any more. However, if there's anything you need before the battle, junior brother, just feel free to order the disciples to do it." After hearing Han Li's words, Lu Luo, the man's expression eased slightly. Han Li smiled, but after a moment of thought, he slowly said, "For this great battle, I really need to make some preparations. There are some special materials. I'm afraid I'll need a few of you seniors to help me collect them." Han Li didn't hold back. He immediately from his storage pouch took out a jade slip he had already prepared and handed it to Lu Luo. "Don't worry. As long as the materials can be found in Tianyi City, I will definitely help you gather them all, junior brother." Taking the jade slip, Lu Luo accepted it without hesitation. Han Li's heart warmed slightly. After nodding, they chatted for a few more moments and then he took his leave. The materials recorded on the jade slip he gave to Lu Luo were the auxiliary materials for refining the Advent armor. On the way back to his residence, he had already thought it over. Although he felt that, with his current divine abilities, participating in the battle would be no problem, but he was always cautious and prudent by habit. He still felt he should prepare an extra ace up his sleeve, so he immediately thought of the Advent armor as a tactic. This was also the only powerful killing move that could be prepared in a matter of days. Other things, like re-refining, a flying sword, or practicing cultivation, things like the Great Zheng witnessing, simply cannot be completed in just a few days. The only thing that made Han Li a little concerned was the success rate of crafting this Advent talisman. Originally, he wanted to find a satisfactory spirit talisman brush and practice his talisman techniques for a while longer. Then he would start crafting the Advent talisman. But now, it seemed there was no time. Even if the success rate was a bit low, he had to give it a try. If the crafting was successful, he would naturally have another trump card. If it failed, it wouldn't matter much either. After all, in the span of a few days, even if he made other preparations, it would be impossible to significantly increase his own strength. Thinking this, Han Li unhurriedly went to the pavilion where he lived. After entering the bedroom, he sat cross-legged on the bed. Soon, he entered a meditative state and closed his eyes. And what do you know? The disciples of the Falling Cloud sect were really fast. In just 2 days, all the materials Han Li needed were fully prepared, and they were all delivered into Han Li's hands. Seeing this, Han Li was delighted. It seems that being an elder of the Falling Cloud sect is actually quite good. Taking these materials, Han Li once again entered the secret chamber and sat cross-legged in the middle of the secret chamber. He laid out the supplementary materials one by one in front of him. Finally, from his storage bag, he took out a small, dark green bottle. He cautiously opened the cap. With a soft pop, a ball of blood-red light shot out from the bottle. But Han Li, who was already prepared, raised a hand without any change in expression. He made a grasping motion in the air with his 5 fingers spread open. Golden light flashed brilliantly. A large hand of light immediately scooped the blood-red ball into its grasp. Afterward, a hazy cyan glow flowed ceaselessly. His 5 fingers trembled slightly. The ball of blood-red light immediately revealed its form within the cyan glow. It was almost a few inches in size. The small, blood-red jowl spun restlessly in his palm. It looked as if it wanted to fly away at any moment. but the surrounding cyan light formed a tangible barrier, trapping this Zhao soul firmly within the large hand. Like a bird in a cage, it was completely unable to leave. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly. A blue glint flickered deep within his pupils. He instantly saw this venomous Zhao's spirit soul, perceiving it inside and out with perfect clarity. Seeing this little blood-red Zhao so lively and energetic, it seemed to be just as it was when he first captured it in the bottle several years ago. Exactly the same, but under the gaze of his bright comprehension spirit eyes. Han Li, however, clearly noticed something was amiss. Although the spiritual power within the Zhao's soul was still the same, astonishingly powerful, but the divine light in its eyes was lifeless and vacant. It actually looked somewhat dim-witted. This was a clear sign that its consciousness had vanished. The current Zhao soul possessed only immense spiritual power, but its mind had already regressed to a state before it gained sentience. Its earlier attempt to flee was merely an instinct from when it was alive. Han Li sighed softly. He thought back to that shape-shifting, 8th-level poison Zhao. How overwhelmingly arrogant it had been. Its divine abilities were vast, but now, its soul had fallen into his hands. In just a few years, its consciousness had completely dissipated, making it no different from a wild beast. The contrast between its past life and its current state was so immense. It truly made one feel a bit sentimental. It also made Han Li secretly more vigilant. The path of cultivation is fraught with hardship and difficulty. If one day, his physical body was destroyed and his soul fell into enemy hands, his fate would be no better than this poison Zhao's. He sat there, thinking silently for a moment. Han Li sighed. Then, with a flick of his hand, a ball of clear light enveloped the small, blood-red Zhao soul and shot out from his grasp. It shot directly towards the space about 10 feet above his head. It floated motionlessly in the air. Ignoring the mixture of poisonous gel essence, Han Li glanced down at the materials before her. Suddenly, she reached out her hand and pointed a finger at a piece of unknown spirit beast hide. Instantly, this rare, emerald green piece of scaled hide slowly floated up. It flew to a position in front of Han Li's chest. A golden light flashed in Han Li's eyes as she opened her mouth. A wisp of azure flame shot out from her mouth, striking the scaled hide directly. It enveloped this piece of scaled hide within it. Yet, strangely, it did not cause it to burn. She formed a hand seal with both hands. Her 10 fingers flickered unceasingly, one after another. Incantation seals struck the scaled hide. The flame flickered erratically. It began to flicker, now bright, now dim. Just at this moment, Han Li's incantation seal came to a halt. She extended a single, fair finger, and pointed at a white jade box in front of her. With a whoosh, the box lid flew to one side on its own, revealing the shimmering silver powder inside. She beckoned with a finger towards the jade box. A small portion of the silver powder immediately formed into a silver thread, and shot directly into the azure flame. Instantly, silver sparks appeared within the flame, and were instantly guided by Han Li's incantation seal. It gathered towards the scale hide in the center of the firelight. The entire piece of scale hide instantly transformed into a large, silver curtain of light. It began to slowly rotate within the flames. Han Li's expression grew increasingly grave. Facing the many bottles and jars in front of him, he began to select from them one by one all sorts of materials, dazzlingly submerged into the flames. The flames enveloping the scale hide changed from silver to black, then from black to green. When it finally turned a blood-red color, Han Li let out a long breath. He finally stopped adding materials into the fire. Instead, he began to chant an incantation in a low voice. At the same time, with a tremor of several of his fingers, several fine, azure threads shot out from his fingertips, striking the scale hide directly. Instantly, the scale hide stopped rotating, and under the pull of the azure threads, it began to sway erratically, sometimes slow and sometimes fast. Amidst the sound, Han Li expressionlessly continued these actions. Gradually, on the surface of the scale hide within the flames, wisps of black shea began to emerge. The moment this black shea made contact, the blood-red flames outside were instantly annihilated. But a faint, fishy stench filled the secret chamber, and although the entire scale hide had shrunk in size, Han Li paid it not one bit of mind. This process continued for well over 2 hours. When the scaly hide's last trace of dark energy was finally refined away, his expression relaxed, and he let out a long sigh of relief. After adding several more materials into the flame and refining it for a short while, Han Li's eyes flickered a few times. He suddenly blew gently at the flame. With a puff, the flame was immediately sucked away. Han Li revealed what was inside, which had become a blood-red complete scaly hide. At this moment, it was only the size of a palm. Seeing the scaly hide take on this appearance, a look of satisfaction appeared on his face. He clapped his hands and glanced at the Jiao Soul above him. Without further hesitation, he pointed a finger at it. As the clear light surrounding the Jiao Soul vanished, it immediately transformed into spakes of spiritual light, disappearing without a trace. The Jiao Soul, however, seemed to be drawn by something. It shot directly towards the blood-red scaly hide. With a whooshing sound, it sank into the surface of the scaly hide and vanished from sight. Upon seeing the Jiao Soul merge into the scaly hide, Han Li, without a second thought, flipped his palm over. A misty blue talisman brush appeared in his palm. It was 6 to 7 inches long, small and exquisite. It looked exceptionally delicate. With his other hand, he then turned to a certain open green healing jar. With a wave of his hand, a ball of golden liquid floated lightly out from the river. The fubai in the dish quickly darted towards the golden liquid and dipped into it. Then, his expression grew stern. He aimed at the floating scale skin. The fubai began to skillfully dot and draw in the void. One by one, indecipherable golden runes poured out from the tip of the brush. In the blink of an eye, they shot forward, disappearing into the blood-red scale skin without a trace. Then, on the surface of the scale skin, runes of various sizes appeared, shining with a brilliant golden light. They were as neat as if they were carved on, and at the very moment these runes emerged, the scale skin began to tremble violently. A dragon's roar suddenly erupted from it. Then, the surface of the scale skin bulged. A blood-red Jiao Soul burst out from the skin, looking as if it was trying to escape its fate. But at that very instant, the golden runes on the scale skin flared with brilliant light. A twisted pattern appeared as if to form a barrier. It began to entangle it, wrapping it tightly and then forcefully pulling it back. Although it no longer had consciousness, the Jiao Soul was still the spirit of a heaven and earth spiritual beast. It subconsciously sensed danger. It struggled desperately against the golden runes, trying to break free and escape. At this moment, Han Li's talisman brush was even faster than the runes he was activating. Golden runes of all sizes shone directly onto the Jiao Soul. In a flash, it was completely trapped. Then, little by little, it was pulled back into the scaly hide. Seizing this opportunity, Han Li paused his hand movements. He immediately switched to a purple liquid. He also dipped his talisman brush in it and drew strange, Lin Men-style symbols. Unhurriedly, he flicked them out one by one. Every so often, Han Li would switch to another kind of spiritual liquid. All sorts of symbols and runes appeared one by one on the spiritual hide. Before long, on the surface of this palm-sized spiritual hide, shimmered a dense array of multicolored glows. It appeared to be brimming with spiritual energy. But Han Li's expression grew increasingly solemn. His drawing also became slower and slower. A blue light flickered incessantly in his eyes. He pushed the divine ability of his bright sight spirit eyes to its absolute limit, just as a red rune was finished, and flew into the scaly hide. Suddenly, an unusual fluctuation of spiritual energy emanated from the half-finished spiritual talisman, and became increasingly violent. Han Li's expression changed drastically. He inwardly cursed his terrible luck. But immediately, without a second thought, he swept his large sleeve across the ground. A swath of azure light flew out and coiled up, instantly gathering all the materials. At the same time, his other hand made a motion in the air before him. A small blue shield shot out from his sleeve. It instantly expanded, shielding his body. Just as Han Li had finished doing all this, the rhombus-shaped talisman, with a deafening dragon's roar, exploded. The five-colored ball of light was dazzlingly bright. An astonishing amount of spiritual energy rushed out in all directions, like a giant wave crashing against the blue shield. After the large shield trembled slightly, it held firm and blocked the impact. Han Li was quite surprised to see this, because according to the immense power of the Advent Talisman, this kind of talisman crafting, an explosion from a failure, should have possessed considerable destructive power. But now it had been blocked so easily. This was completely different from what he had expected. Just as Han Li was feeling shocked and bewildered, a streak of blood-red light shot out from the ball of light. In a flash, it reached the top of the secret chamber, about to escape the room. But as soon as the blood-red light touched the ceiling, a curtain of white light suddenly appeared without any warning. It instantly reflected the blood-red light back, and forced it to reveal its form. It was that small, blood-colored Jiao. The poisoned Jiao's spirit was stunned for a moment. Then it became greatly alarmed. Without a second thought, he raised a single hand and grabbed towards the void. A large, cyan hand suddenly appeared above the Jiao Soul's head and instantly snatched it in its grasp. Then it shot downwards, At that moment, Han Li extended a finger and casually pointed at the shield before him. After a blue light rippled out, the shield rapidly shrank. After circling once, it shot into his sleeve by itself. Then, Han Li gazed at the newly captured Jiao Soul. He once again used the bright and clear spirit eyes ability. An expression of surprise appeared on Han Li's face, and he let out a soft gasp of astonishment. Although it was still the original Jiao Soul, its soul power was clearly much weaker than before. The small, blood-colored Jiao also looked completely listless. Gazing at the Jiao Soul, Han Li rubbed his chin, a contemplative look on his face. It seems the refining of this descent talisman has failed. The demon soul didn't collapse immediately. It merely lost some of its soul power. If that's the case, although the Advent talisman is difficult to refine, but before its soul power is completely depleted, it can be refined repeatedly, a few times, with a chance of a successful refinement. Of course, if it is refined too many times, the soul power will naturally be greatly reduced. The power of the Advent talisman would surely be greatly diminished as well. Han Li understood the reason for this. Han Li let out a soft sigh. The expression on his face relaxed slightly. Even if some soul power was lost, it was better than the poison gel essence soul disintegrating on the first try. This could be considered a blessing in disguise. Han Li gave a wry smile. He once again took out those supplementary materials and arranged them anew. Of course, he switched to another piece of spirit beast hide. A new round of refinement began. While Han Li was in the secret chamber, painstakingly refining the Advent talisman, the entire Tian Nan city, in just 2 or 3 days, was completely mobilized. All the cultivators and sects, large and small, learned that in a few days, they would face a life and death battle with the mages. After a great commotion, all the cultivators in the city emerged from their posts. According to the original plan, they formed into large armies of cultivators. Each with a grave expression, they moved to their stations at the border, setting out one after another. Everyone knew this great war would either end with the Mulan people being defeated and retreating, or with Tian Nan falling into the hands of the spellmasters, and thus, countless sects would lose their heritage forever. Therefore, morale was already extremely high without needing to be roused. And regarding the matter of the 10-round gambling battle, rumors were flying everywhere that a certain faction had a Mulan spy, who leaked the list of participating cultivators back to them, so that they could strategically send out spellmasters to counter them. Therefore, the names of Han Li and the others were still kept secret, except for the old eccentrics present that day. Almost no one knew the specific list. In this way, the identities of these 10 Nascent Soul cultivators naturally became a topic of discussion and speculation among the many cultivators for some time, in order to predict the outcome of the battles. After all, it involved over 1,000 cultivators, and the matter of their survival. Many who hoped their sect's disciples were among them. The sect cultivators were naturally more concerned, and the disciples of the Drifting Cloud sect also followed the troops in succession, leaving Heavenly Unity City. Seeing this situation, Leluo had no choice but to go with them. However, he ordered the woman with the surname Song to remain at the encampment, waiting for Han Li to emerge from his seclusion. In just a few days, except for a few cultivators who remained on guard, Tian Nan City grew emptier by the day. Seeing the days pass one by one, Han Li still showed no sign of emerging from his seclusion. The woman surnamed Song couldn't help but grow anxious. Meanwhile, from the place where Han Li was in seclusion, despite the multiple layers of restrictive seals that had been set, faint dragon roars could still be heard coming from within, as well as the sound of explosions. This not only left the woman greatly astonished, but also a little worried. When the 5th day arrived, the woman surnamed Song made a decision. If her martial uncle Han still failed to emerge, she was afraid she would have no choice but to bite the bullet and force her way in. Otherwise, with another day's delay, they would likely miss the great battle. Now, the woman surnamed Song was in the main hall of the residence, fraught with worrying. She waited quietly in her chair, occasionally glancing toward the faint afterglow of the setting sun visible outside the hall. Her expression was grim and uncertain as she watched the sky grow darker and darker. The woman's beautiful brows furrowed tightly. She bit her red lip and suddenly rose to her feet. Her graceful figure then took 2 steps forward. Suddenly, a clear bell chime echoed into the main hall. The woman was stunned for a moment. Then, a look of pleasant surprise appeared on her face. A moment later, a clear light flashed at the hall's entrance. Han Li's figure emerged impassively from within the radiant glow. "Greetings, Senior." The female messenger hurried. She gracefully stepped forward and performed a respectful bow. "What day is it now?" "It seems the cultivators in the city have all departed. As soon as he came out of the secret chamber, Han Li's spiritual sense immediately felt that the entire Tian city was deserted. Only a few cultivators still remained in the city. Upon seeing this woman, he couldn't help but ask. After all, while in the secret chamber, he could only roughly estimate the time. Although he felt he hadn't passed the scheduled date, it was more reassuring to ask. Reporting to you, Senior, it is now the 5th day. At this, the female messenger was completely relieved. She respectfully replied that on the 5th day, there was more than enough time. However, it is better to arrive at the location a bit earlier. Let's go. After listening, Han Li decisively acknowledged her compliance. The female messenger softly agreed. Han Li raised a hand. A ball of white light shot out from his sleeve, floated towards the courtyard outside the hall. After a flash of brilliance, a white, gear-toothed, square vehicle appeared there. It was precisely that wind-riding chariot. Traveling with this chariot will be faster than your light escape technique. Han Ling's figure flickered, and he was inside the chariot. Then he turned his head and said to the woman. The woman in plain clothes glanced at the chariot. A trace of astonishment flashed in her eyes. Then, without a word, she also boarded the chariot. Seeing this, Han Ling lightly tapped the chariot with the tip of his foot. Instantly, the wind-riding chariot flashed with white light. A layer of white light enveloped both them and the chariot. It then trembled once, and then transformed into a ball of white radiance, soaring through the air. The wind-riding chariot truly was a specialized flying artifact. Not only did it consume little spiritual energy to use, but its speed was far beyond what an ordinary cultivator could match. In the blink of an eye, it had flown out of Skywing City, heading towards the border at great speed. Seeing this, the messenger woman felt even more at ease, and she couldn't help but wonder to herself, was it because this martial Uncle Han possessed such a treasure, that he was so composed, only emerging from his seclusion now? She wondered what kind of powerful technique this unfathomable martial uncle had been cultivating these past few days. The sound of a dragon's roar and an explosion from that secret chamber. What was that all about? Just as this woman was pondering in silence, letting her imagination run wild, Han Li suddenly asked a question, with words that were quite unexpected to her. Our fellow Taoist Ziling and her companion still at the original location. Ziling and the others have temporarily left Skywing City. They plan to wait until after this great war is over, before deciding on their future plans. The messenger woman was taken aback at first, but she immediately replied obediently, that girl Ziling is quite clever. That is indeed a wise move. If I were in her shoes, I would most likely have done the same. Han Li seemed unconcerned, and said with a light laugh. Then, with a calm expression, he urged the vehicle beneath his feet, and the speed of the wind-riding chariot increased by a large margin. Under the messenger woman's astonished gaze, in an instant, it had flown more than 100 feet away. Soon, it turned into a small speck of light, and disappeared over the horizon. In recent days, at a certain section of the border between the Yu and North Liang kingdoms, pairs of cultivators, from two sides dozens of miles apart, riding their magical artifacts and treasures, descended from the sky one after another. Then, they methodically used the original strongholds to establish vast encampments one after another. In a single night, imposing and righteous formations began appearing one after another in large numbers. This once desolate land was thrown into turmoil, and became filled with a murderous aura. Furthermore, small squads of cultivators and mages took to the skies, to stand guard and patrol around the large camps, as if they feared a sudden attack from the other side. As the days passed, more cultivators and mages gathered here. Outposts of all sizes were spread across both sides of the border. The atmosphere also grew heavier by the day. But at the center of the border, patrolling mages and cultivators would occasionally encounter one another. Although they stared coldly at each other, they managed to restrain themselves from fighting. After all, fighting now would be useless for the overall situation. They also pressed their hostility, and quietly waited for the future life and death battle. By the 6th day, the great formations of Tian Nan and Mulan, and their restrictive seals were almost completely set up. Everyone began to remain secluded, conserving their energy and sharpening their spirits within the camps. Even the personnel on patrol were greatly reduced for a time, but high-level cultivators began to appear frequently among the patrol teams. The leadership of the Fa Shai and the cultivators were also tense in the camp, plotting their final battle strategy. To the north of the Tianan cultivators' main camp was Tiani City. Naturally, various restrictive wards were placed in that direction. There were fewer of them in the direction of the Fa Shai, but the necessary sentry posts and patrol personnel were all in place. In fact, their numbers had even slightly increased. In this situation, a team of more than 10 cultivators was away from the main camp, flying at a leisurely pace more than 20 li away. The lead cultivator was a beautiful young woman in her 20s. She had an early core formation cultivation level. The cultivators behind her were at the foundation establishment stage. With the great battle approaching, these people did not dare to be careless. Even though it was just a routine patrol mission, the group remained exceptionally vigilant, constantly looking around. Only the leading young woman appeared slightly more composed, but she also extended her divine sense to its maximum range, sensing any abnormalities in the vicinity. Suddenly, the young woman's expression changed. Her streak of light came to an abrupt stop, and she raised her hand in surprise, gazing into the distance. The other cultivators were startled to see this. They immediately looked in the same direction as if facing a great enemy, but they saw nothing at all. Senior Z, one of the blue-robed cultivators, asked with surprise and doubt. But before the words were even finished, a flash of white light appeared on the distant horizon. A point of light appeared there. Then, it sped towards them. The speed of its escape light was incredibly fast. In almost the blink of an eye, the group perceived that the white point of light had magnified several times over, and within the light, there seemed to be something faint. It must be a senior who has arrived. However, according to the rules, we still need to go up and ask. You all just wait here. The young woman's elegant face was full of composure. She ordered unhurriedly. Then, a yellow light flashed from her body, and she flew directly towards the white light. Seeing this, the other cultivators stared at each other blankly. For a moment, no one said anything. They were not from the same sect as the young woman, and their cultivation and seniority were lower. Naturally, they didn't dare to have any objections. The young woman had only flown a short distance when she came to a halt, because the point of light had already arrived before her. It transformed into a dazzling ball of light and stopped abruptly. Inside, there seemed to be a strange, chariot-shaped magical artifact, and faint figures could be seen moving inside. Junior Zekiah of Yellow Maple Valley pays her respects to you. Senior, could you please reveal your identity? This junior is only acting under orders. Please forgive me, senior. Although the beautiful young woman was inwardly shocked, she still spoke politely in her melodious voice. Zekiah. A surprised voice came from within the White Palace. Senior, you know me. This junior, Zekiah, blinked her clear, bright eyes. A stunned expression appeared on her face. Among the several Nascent Soul cultivators she knew, there didn't seem to be a cultivator with an appearance like this. However, the voice did sound somewhat familiar, as if she had heard it somewhere before. As the woman gazed at the ball of light, the white light flickered a few times, and its brilliance subsided, revealing everything inside. On a peculiar white flying chariot stood two young cultivators, a man and a woman. The man was dressed in a long cyan robe, with an ordinary appearance. The woman, however, wore a white dress, and was stunningly beautiful. Uncle Han. The moment she saw the face of the man in the cyan robe, Zekiah covered her mouth with her hand, and cried out in surprise. Her beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. Little girl, you've grown up. You're so different now compared to before. Hanli sized up the young woman. He looked at her pretty and familiar face. A faint smile appeared on his face. Martial uncle, is it really you? Senior sister Ni and senior brother Lei did mention you. Martial uncle, something about your advancement, but I still found it hard to believe. Zekiah said with pleasant surprise. Her expression seemed to return to that of the young girl she was when she first met Hanli. Meeting them back then was just a coincidence. Hanli smiled. He said nonchalantly. He was the one who had personally brought this woman into Yellow Maple Valley. Although they hadn't had much contact, he felt somewhat differently about her. Furthermore, this woman was also senior brother Ma's personal disciple back then. Towards her, Hanli naturally wasn't the same as he was towards Ni Ying and Lei Wan. He offered them no special consideration. The messenger girl standing to the side witnessed this scene. She quietly muttered to herself. She had vaguely heard people say that this martial uncle of hers was originally a disciple of Yellow Maple Valley. It seemed he had now run into an old acquaintance, and the young woman before her looked exceptionally clever. She wondered what kind of relationship they had. Regardless of what the messenger girl was guessing, Hanli and Zekiah began to chat warmly, and some stories from after their breakup back then, including Zekiah and the little old man, how they thrillingly escaped the pursuit of the demonic Tao and returned to Yellow Maple Valley, the passing of senior brother Ma, and how this woman coincidentally formed her golden core, among other things. This made Hanli sigh with emotion for a moment. about how quickly the world changes. But after a while, after Zikir hesitated for a bit, she couldn't help but ask, "Did you really become an elder of the Drifting Cloud sect? Does that mean you won't be coming back anymore?" After she said this, a look of anticipation faintly appeared on Zikir's face. The current Yellow Maple Valley is in an extremely awkward predicament. Although the sect has a mid-Nascent Soul stage patriarch Ling who presiding over it, but they are troubled by the lack of other Nascent Soul cultivators to succeed him. Once his lifespan is exhausted and he passes on, Yellow Maple Valley's status among the six sects will definitely plummet. Their situation is truly worrying. So, it's not just Lei Wan and the others who are worried. Even a junior core formation cultivator like Zikir is also deeply concerned. What's more, there's Niying and others who know about her relationship with Han Li and the other cultivators, and also for Zikir too. Upon seeing Han Li, try her best to persuade him. Perhaps Han Li, for old time's sake, would still be moved. Therefore, after a moment of surprise and joy, even though Zikir knew that Han Li had already refused Lei Wan and the others, she still had to bring the matter up again. "It's impossible for me to go back. The Lu Yun sect has treated me well. I will not be leaving. There's no need to say any more on this matter." Upon hearing Zikir's words, the smile on Han Li's face faded. Shaking his head, he said, "But what about our Yellow Maple Valley's future?" Zikir's expression darkened, a look of helplessness on her face. "You don't need to worry too much. I once made a few deals with old eccentric Ling Hu. If Yellow Maple Valley truly faces a crisis, I will still lend a hand within certain limits." Han Li sighed, and regarding this deal, he vaguely explained it to her. With these words, "Thank you so much, Martial Uncle." Zikir was stunned at first, then her spirits immediately lifted as she said, "Let's not talk about this for now. You are senior brother Ma's only disciple, and we haven't seen each other for so many years. I couldn't just leave you without a little help. This is from when I killed some other cultivators in the past. A magic treasure I obtained. Although it cannot be used as a life-bound treasure, once you refine it, it will have its own wonderful uses in combat. And this bottle of elixirs will help advance your cultivation. It's also incredibly effective for breaking through bottlenecks. Take them both." After Han Li pondered for a moment, he took out an emerald green ring from his storage pouch and a bottle of elixirs, handing them to the woman. "Thank you, Martial Uncle, for the gift." Seeing the gift, Zikir, after hastily performing a deep bow of gratitude, joyfully accepted the two items. "All right, I still have to go to the main camp to meet with those old monsters, so I won't delay here any longer. We'll meet again if fate allows." Han Li waited for the woman to put the items away, and then calmly said his farewells. Then, before the woman could react, with a tap of his toes, the flying chariot beneath his feet instantly erupted in a brilliant white light. The figures of Han Li and the messenger woman became blurry once again in the piercing light. Respectfully seeing off Martial Uncle Han, the young woman had wanted to say something more, but seeing this, she could only hurriedly bow once more, and watched as the ball of light became a white streak and vanished into the sky. Then, the woman stood there, stunned. She stared motionlessly in the direction where the spot of light had vanished. At this moment, her subordinates finally flew over to her. Senior Z, who was that senior? Was he a Nascent Soul cultivator? But he looked so young. Several cultivators gathered around and began to chatter curiously. "Stop asking so many questions. That person is indeed a Nascent Soul stage senior. He once did me a great favor. He is not someone we can casually discuss. Let's just continue our patrol." After Zikir regained her composure, she swept a glance over them with a beautiful face as cold as ice, and said bluntly. Hearing this, the others immediately fell silent. After leaving Zikir, the speed of the wind-riding chariot decreased significantly, but after a short while, they arrived near the main camp. Han Li felt this chariot was too conspicuous, so he put away this treasure. The two of them switched to flying on streaks of light. The woman with the surname Song tactfully never asked about what had just happened, which made Han Li nod himself in approval. After flying for a short distance, a massive curtain of light appeared in front of the two of them. It was five-colored. It was thick, solid, and dazzling to the eye. It illuminated the entire camp. Before Han Li and his companion could fly down, another pair of disciples on duty had already hurried forward to greet them. After verifying the identities of the two, they immediately opened a path and respectfully allowed the two of them to enter behind the light barrier. Upon entering the camp, Han Li parted ways with the woman surnamed Song. She needed to go report to Lu Luo, and then join a certain pre-arranged team. to await orders among the cultivators. Meanwhile, Hanli went directly to the center of the main camp, where he met with those in charge, Ziyang, Shangren, and the other of the 3 great cultivators. When they saw that Hanli had arrived as scheduled, they were naturally very satisfied. After asking a few questions, they briefed him on some of the arrangements for the great battle. Hanli was not particularly interested in this. After listening for a moment, he took his leave. He was then assigned a private, temporary room. Inside, he sat cross-legged and meditated, to rest and build up his strength. Hanli meditated quietly in the room. After an unknown amount of time had passed, the bit of spiritual power he had consumed while traveling had gradually returned to its peak state. When he opened his eyes and inspected his internal condition, a faint smile appeared on his face. Ever since he cultivated the Qingyuan sword art to the 10th layer, I could clearly feel it. The recovery of my spiritual power had increased significantly compared to before. This was an unexpected, pleasant surprise. Thinking this to himself, Hanli pondered for a moment. He reached into his robes and took out a shiny, jet-black wooden box. On the lid of the box were several shimmering green restriction talismans. He swept a hand over the lid, and the several talismans fell off, turning into several streaks of green light that shot into his sleeve. Hanli then tapped the box with a finger. Instantly, the lid opened by itself, revealing the item inside. A palm-sized talisman covered in runes lay quietly inside the box. On the talisman's surface, a small, blood-colored flood dragon was swimming back and forth restlessly. Hanli reached out and beckoned lightly toward the talisman. Instantly, this talisman flew out. After circling once, it landed gently on his hand. He had spent several days of effort on it, failing 3 times in a row, before finally succeeding in crafting this talisman. Although he didn't know how powerful it was, he was certain that this arrival talisman, compared to the power described in the crafting method, was considerably weaker. After all, he had failed to craft it 3 times. It caused that level 8 Jiao soul to lose most of its soul power. Its true effectiveness can only be tested in actual combat. He then used his fingers to stroke the various runes on the surface of the talisman, falling into deep thought, his expression fluctuating uncertainly, while Hanli was meditating quietly in his abode. In the cultivators' encampment, dozens of miles away from the Tian Nan Great Camp, in a certain stone chamber hundreds of feet deep underground, several mysterious figures were also gathered around a stone table, discussing something. 5 men and 2 women. Among them, 1 man and 1 woman were cloaked in black robes, their faces completely hidden from view. And among the others were 2 people that Hanli recognized. One was from the Battle of Huang Long Mountain that day, the one who wielded a bone lantern. The woman surnamed Le, who had caused him considerable trouble. The other was the one who had hunted him for several days and nights, the middle-aged Confucian scholar, Master Zhang, who had greatly depleted his vital energy. As for the remaining 3 men, one was a dark, gaunt old man, one was a short man less than 4 feet tall, and a large, imposing man dressed in brocade robes. Master Le, how are your preparations coming along? You know, the duration for which the sacred lamp is lit is related to this session's length of the sacred beast's appearance. This is a burden I must bear, without a single misstep. The old man's face was full of wrinkles, but his eyes were clear. He sat quietly at a corner of the stone table, and asked the woman of the Yue clan faintly, "Divine Master, please rest assured. This battle concerns the very survival of my clan. I have brought the lamp oil that my clan has stored for 1,000 years. I brought it all out at once. It is enough to support Shengqin through this entire battle." The woman of the Yue clan from Jade Mountain said with a solemn expression, "Scholar practitioner, the spirit technique grand formation you organized, it should be fine, right? Compared to the cultivators from Tianan, our spellcasters are inferior in both the quantity and quality of our magical artifacts. The enemy is not just a single clan. We can only rely on the spirit technique grand formation to suppress their attacks." The old man turned and looked towards the middle-aged scholar. "There is no problem. My several hundred years of research on spirit technique formations were not in vain. I have already passed on the newly improved tree seed grand formation to them. If the Tianan cultivators still judge us by the power of the original spirit technique formations to gauge this battle, they are in for a big surprise." The scholar said calmly, "That's good. When the melee begins, you are to have all the high-level spellcasters first summon the void spirit beast to attack, to draw the enemy's attack. Deplete the cultivator's mana as much as possible. Sec Master Huang, this will also require the cooperation of your Jambis." The withered old man gave a few instructions to the short man. Then he spoke politely to the man in the black robe. Before the battle begins, I will hand over those giant beasts to you. However, the matter your noble clan promised us, you won't go back on your word afterward, will you? After the man in the black robe readily agreed, he added with deep meaning, go back on our word. Brother Huang, you must be joking. Right after a great battle with the cultivators. Afterward, would our Mulan clan do something as foolish as offending your esteemed sect? After all, your Yingluo sect is also in the Great Jin, one of the 10 great demonic sects. Once our Mulan clan captures Tian Nan, we will only focus on recuperating and rebuilding. A few mere mortal nations, given to your esteemed sect to manage, is not such a big deal. Besides, these mortals are all Yin people. We won't care in the slightest about their lives or deaths. The withered old man's eyes flickered a few times. He said ruthlessly, that's good, this time. If it weren't for our Yingluo sect's ultimate treasure, the Gui Luo banner, it was destroyed by those guys from the righteous path. I urgently need a large number of living souls to repair it. My sect will absolutely not get involved with you in the conflict between the mages and the Tian Nan cultivators. If we were to collect a large number of living souls in the Great Jin, we would definitely be entangled by those guys from the righteous path. Although we do not fear them, the repair of the treasure cannot be delayed. After the black-robed man nodded, he said in a voice devoid of emotion, furthermore, all the cultivators who die in this great war, their souls will also belong to my sect. You masters have no objection to this, right? The black-robed woman also spoke, but her voice was hoarse, a complete mismatch for her slender figure. Anyone hearing it for the first time would surely be startled. We naturally won't interfere with the cultivators' souls, but the souls of the mages, can't you identify and release them? Some time ago, you were unscrupulously collecting the souls of the war dead. That has already put the 3 of us old folks in a very difficult position. We can offer some compensation in other ways. Upon hearing this, the withered beast elder's expression turned grim as he spoke. That is not acceptable. The souls of cultivators and mages have no inherent difference to begin with. It's simply impossible to distinguish them. Besides, even if there were a way to identify them, in tomorrow's battle, there will surely be thousands of cultivators who die. Are you going to teach us how to identify them one by one? Are the 3 divine masters planning to go back on your word in this matter? The man in the black robe narrowed his eyes. His pupils instantly turned an emerald green. A sinister, cold aura erupted from his entire body. The sudden aura was overwhelming. Seeing this, the short man surnamed Bai and the other grew furious. Although they didn't make a move, on one, a faint silver fur appeared on his body, while on the other, a red light flickered across his face. They both stared silently at the man in the black robe. The large man in brocade robes and the woman surnamed Le also stared coldly at the man in the black robe, with looks of displeasure. After all, the matter of collecting the living souls of fallen cultivators had long since made these people extremely dissatisfied. If they hadn't desperately needed these demonic cultivators from the state of Jin, they might have already turned on them. Hey, stop. What are you all doing? Sect Master Feng is a guest that I, Jew, personally invited. Are you not even going to show me some respect? After the old man gave a light cough, his expression darkened, and the woman in the black robe on the other side also moved his lips slightly, sending a message to the black-robed man. He said something. What? Upon hearing this, the black-robed man, the green light in his eyes gradually faded. The chilling aura around him also vanished in a strange flash. It disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, the scholar and the others let out a sigh of relief and also dispersed the sharp aura around them. They were all very clear. Although they disliked each other, for now, it was a matter of mutual benefit. It was not the time for internal strife. How about this? You can take the living souls, but you must do it secretly after the battle. You must not let anyone else see. Otherwise, we won't be able to control our subordinates will to defend. After hesitating for a moment, the old man gritted his teeth and said, all right, this sect can agree to this condition. After his gaze flickered a few times, the black-robed man also conceded and nodded in agreement. Although the scholar and the others were still somewhat dissatisfied, they could only accept it. Is the method your esteemed sect prepared for the duel really going to work? Don't let it backfire. You should know. Tian Nan also has demonic cultivators. Don't let them see through you at a glance. The large man in the brocade robe, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said lightly, demonic cultivators. Can they even be considered as such? They merely understand some crude cultivation techniques, or they try to be clever with the demonic cultivation arts. changing them beyond all recognition. How could they know the power of the true ancient demonic arts? The man in the black robe sneered. He spoke with utter disdain. Is that so? But an elder from your esteemed sect seemed to have been dealt with by a Tian Nan cultivator of the same level, killed in an instant. I think you'd best not underestimate them. Sect master. The short man curled his lip. He said with a hint of sarcasm. The gaze of the man in the black robe turned cold. He snorted, but he offered no rebuttal. However, the woman in the black robe took this opportunity to speak. I was actually just about to mention this matter. That cultivator, who can release the golden gourd, is of some use to our Yin Luo sect. We hope the 3 divine masters will hand him over for us to deal with. I wonder what you divine masters think. Hand him over to you. The beast tamer elder fell into contemplation upon hearing this. What? This one small condition. You 3 are unwilling to agree to it. The woman in the black robe seemed a little displeased. Her voice became even more coarse and unpleasant. If it were just a mere Nascent Soul, early-stage cultivator, handing it over to you to fellow Taoists is naturally not a problem. But if the thunder bamboo magical treasure is involved, then it's a completely different matter. The old man stared at the black-robed woman. A strange smile emerged from his wrinkled face, and said unhurriedly, fellow Taoist Jew has already guessed it. The black-robed woman's heart sank, and she was a bit surprised. Our Mulin Prairie may be a bit barren, but regarding the 3 great divine tombs of the cultivation world, this old man still knows a thing or two. Although not many people know of the evil warding divine lightning, it cannot be hidden from the few of us. The old man said deliberately, since you know about the evil warding divine lightning, you should know that our demon sect absolutely cannot let this item fall into the hands of others. If you have any conditions, just state them directly. The black-robed man saw through the other party's intentions, and asked coldly, it's very simple. I've heard that your esteemed sect, besides bringing a dozen or so beasts this time, also brought quite a few copper-armored corpse soldiers. I hope that at the critical moment in tomorrow's battle, Cultivator Fang can release this batch of soldiers, to lend my clan a helping hand. After all, no matter how well we prepare, we don't know how the cultivators will face the enemy. Naturally, we must be extra cautious. The wrinkles on the old man's cheeks twitched slightly. He said with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. Oh, I didn't expect, fellow Taoist Jew, that you would know so much about my sect's secret arts. Although the copper-armored soldiers are relatively easy to craft, if we lose too many at once, it will be detrimental to our sect's future development. If that is the condition, then that cultivator from the heavenly south who wields the evil warding divine lightning must be captured alive by you and handed over to our sect. The black-robed man thought for a moment. He didn't refuse outright. Instead, he stated his own conditions regarding capturing the cultivator alive. Are you joking? You also know that, on that day, fellow Taoist Zhang once made a move against this person. But not only is this person proficient in the lightning escape art, he also knows a type of blood escape art that has never been seen before. It's fundamentally impossible to stop him from escaping, and his other divine abilities are also considerable. Capturing him alive is as difficult as capturing an existence of our level. There's not much difference. Do you fellow Taoists think that is possible? If we were to kill this person, and just snatch the startling Thunder Pearl magic treasure, we would have some confidence in that. The withered old man said sinisterly, since he is so difficult to capture alive, then a dead one will do. This was somewhat surprising to the elder. After the man in the black robe briefly formed a hand seal, he immediately changed his tune and took a defensive stance. The elder, the scholar, and the others exchanged a glance. After a brief discussion via voice transmission, they agreed to the matter.